For the Gallant Swans at Adelaide, the Crows are in good form coming into a huge Round 5 battle, accounting for the Gallant Swans at Adelaide Oval in a tight encounter. This week's match against three-time premiership winners Hawthorn will be the club's toughest yet, especially at the Hawks' home ground of the MCG. If we win, the Victorian media might finally start paying some real attention to what we can do, but if we lose, it will put a small dent in our great start to the season. This game starts on Friday, which is just tomorrow at 7:50pm local time. I'm your host Scorpus, and this is the Crowcast Preview. Alright, so I think I stuffed up the preview recording at the start of that just a little bit, but with me tonight on the cast, we have two, again, high-quality members from the Big Footy boards. We've got Mr. Mystery Guest and Phoenix. How are you guys going tonight?
Good, thanks, mate.
Yeah, good. So, first of all, just before we get into the teams for this week, just want to go through some of the tips and reviews of what we did last week and who we think won. So, Phoenix, you tipped Sydney by 4 goals with the best on ground of Franklin. That didn't really pan out that way, unfortunately, but Mr. Mystery Guest and I, we did quite well tipping Adelaide to win. And yeah, so tips overall, we've currently got Danos on the board, who's leading our tipping competition there from the guys who appear on the Big Footy cast, so good on him. I'm currently in second place, and Hank, Mr. Mystery Guest, Phoenix, and Big Fella all a little bit away. How do you guys feel that you went on the tipping, Mr. Mystery Guest?
I got 7 this week, so I did a bit better.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's the best I've had all year.
Yeah, there were definitely some interesting matches. I think I also got 7, but I stuffed up. I actually bet on Melbourne to win and then tipped Collingwood, which was just stupid. So, kind of a stupid mistake there.
That and the Brisbane Gold Coast game are the ones that got wrong.
Yeah, same here. That Brisbane game, I think they spent all their effort tickets in that match. So, not sure we'll see a performance like that again, but I guess it was good for them to get a win. All right, let's get into the teams for this week. We've made one change, which has been forced due to injury. Out comes Wayne Milera, unfortunately, and we have bringing in for his first game of the season, Charlie Cameron. The Hawks have made 2 changes. They're bringing in Gibson and Hill, and they're bringing out Howe and Litherland. So those are 2 massive ins for them. There are still some notable omissions for both teams. Brad Crouch is still out. The club has chosen to rest him this week. And also, of course, Milera, who came out. Roughhead is missing for the Hawks. I think that's probably their main forward target that's missing. So, yeah, a bit unlucky for them. The last match, if we want to bring this up and remember our shocking performance in the semi-final last year at the MCG, we lost by a whopping 74 points. We basically got destroyed. Bruce had 6 goals, Hodge 4 goals and 24 touches, Mitchell 33 touches. Dangerfield was our best on ground, and Jenkins somehow managed to kick 4 goals, one of only 4 goal kickers on the night. So hopefully that doesn't happen this week. Mr. Mystery Guest, how do you feel about Cameron coming in for Milera, sorry.
I don't know, it just seems like the most logical one. I'll probably, right now I'll probably prefer that to Knight. I think Knight just seemed a little bit off when he came in for the Richmond game. So probably better to, since we didn't just keep Knight in, probably better to give Cameron his chance now. Sorry. And with Betts, Cameron and McGovern, we should be able to put a lot of pressure on their halfbacks.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people on the board had the opinion that McGovern was playing Cameron's role, and now that we've brought in Cameron, but we haven't removed McGovern from the side, it's kind of interesting how much tackling pressure they'll bring to the forward line, and some of those crafty goals that we're used to seeing from Cameron from last season, hopefully those return, as well as some continued great performances from McGovern. And you did mention Riley Knight. Of course, he's on the emergency list, listed first, along with Nathan Van Berlo and Cam Ellis-Yolman. So I think, yeah, those two, Riley Knight would be the most likely change if it wasn't going to be Cameron. Of course, I think Menzel also plays a similar role, but he'll be playing SANFL this week, which we'll get to a little bit later. Phoenix, who do you see matching up on the rest of our dangerous forwards like Walker, Lynch, and Jenkins? And
they tend to play a bit of a zone. Sorry about that. I would imagine that they will concentrate heavily on Eddie and also Jenkins. Gibson, I would imagine, will have some sort of role on Eddie, whether it's a hard marking role or just a minding role. I'm not quite sure. I personally think Eddie will play further up the ground this week. With Cameron coming back in, I think Cameron will play closer to goals, and Eddie will come up the ground and try to expose them across the half forward line. It's going to be very interesting to see how they do match up, because I don't know whether they've necessarily got the personnel to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they brought out Litherland from their side, who was playing a sort of tallish defensive role, and of course they've brought back Gibson. But I mean, in their backline, they're only playing. They've got their key defender, which is Frawley, as well as Gibson and Stratton, and we're playing almost four talls with Lynch, McGovern, Jenkins, and Walker in there. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how those matchups go, because like some of even the Hawks people were mentioning on the board, they were kind of coming up with some matchups, not really seeing who would go to McGovern or who's necessarily taking Betts. Although some people suggested Jure for that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go. Although Betts hasn't been in super great form against the Hawks, I think it's kind of one of his bogey sides maybe in terms of scoring. So hopefully he can kick a bag this week, and we will have a nice win. Mr. Mystery Guest, obviously Hawthorn also has some quite dangerous forwards, none other than Jack Gunston being their main target. I think Talia will probably go to Gunston, but who do you see taking O'Brien and Sicily, who will be in the forward line?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm thinking that we'll probably keep up the rotation. It depends how many tools they have in their forward line at any one time, because we've got McAvoy and Segler as well, but I don't think they would have four of them in there at once. So I'm thinking normally I would say Hardigan to whoever's the ruckman forward, or O'Brien, and then have Lever or Cheney on Sicily.
Yeah, I think Hardigan definitely provides that big body that could, tackle down the ruckman there. But O'Brien and Sicily are fairly new to the AFL system, I guess. So it'll be interesting how those guys, whether they'll be able to get off the chain or anything, considering that our defenders are probably a bit more experienced, especially on O'Brien, who I think has only played maybe like under 10 AFL games. And although Sicily's been in quite a good form, so hopefully whether Hardigan or Lever or one of those guys manages to take him, we can curb his influence. Because, I mean, like, Talia is such a good defender that I think he'll probably definitely have the wood over Gunston and probably take him out of the contest entirely. So it'll be how those other guys like Sicily, like O'Brien, and like Bruce, who will probably be up against Betts and, against Brown and Rioli. I mean, all those guys in there will be very, very dangerous. And hopefully they don't all get off the chain like Bruce did in the previous match, kicking 6 goals. Actually, on Bruce, his form is very good against Adelaide. He's kicked 6, 3, 3, 2, 2, and 3 goals in the past 6 matches. Most of those matches have been losses, unfortunately. The last time we won against Hawthorn was, it would have been 2011, round 1 at Amy Stadium. So it's been a while. Do you reckon that'll play on the minds of our team, Phoenix?
Look, I don't think so. I'm hopeful that we will back in our new system and structure. To be honest with you, I think past results aren't really relevant in this particular match, because certainly from last year, I think we'd run out of petrol tickets by the time we got to Hawthorn in the finals. And we've injected some new talent with the seed, and brought a couple through. And to be honest with you, the matchups down back for us are going to be quite interesting, and a lot will depend on whether Hawthorn learn from what we have done in the past couple of games, which is to really lock down the tall forward in the contest and then run off. They've got some quality smalls there, Bruce, Puopolo, Rioli, which will probably mean that we're going to have to pay more attention to their smalls. Otherwise, we're going to have a couple of Heaney's running around.
Oh, not another Heaney situation. I don't think I could... some of his last quarter efforts there against us last week, I don't want to see anything like that happening again. So, yeah, I agree. We need to lock down on their smalls. I think that's probably their danger zone at the moment. And I think we have the personnel this time to do it, especially playing with a couple more... Well, one more tall defender, sorry. I think we'll have the personnel to tackle that, hopefully. This game is on the MCG, which we haven't had a huge amount of success on over the past couple of years, and it seems like some of our structures don't work so well on the MCG going on previous systems. But of course, we've got a new coach, and we've got some different systems that have been working quite well on Adelaide Oval. Mr. Mystery Guest, do you think the MCG will be an issue for us this week?
Good question. If we can compare ourselves to, I guess, West Coast and the Bulldogs, they don't seem to play that... With their game style, they don't seem to play that well on the MCG. So I'm not sure if that'll be the same for us, or we'll be able to do it a bit differently.
Yeah. I mean, like, they cut us up in uncontested possessions and uncontested marks last time. I mean, they absolutely slaughtered us in those two stats because they have a lot more space provided to them by the MCG. So I think if we can curb that sort of thing, then the MCG will be less of an issue. But it is our first game at the MCG under Pike, so you never know. Do you think it'll be an issue, Phoenix?
Look, to be honest with you, I think with our current game style, it actually works a little bit in our favour. In the past, and certainly the last game we played, they cut us up, as you rightly point out, in uncontested ball because we were playing that mad, contested ball type game plan, whereas we're playing a little bit smarter this time around, and we don't commit so many to the contest. And I think Hawthorn's strategy of crowding the contest and then spreading fast actually works in our favour as long as we can get our fair share of possession out of those contested situations, because these days we spread just as hard as what they do. And I actually think the space of the MCG will make it difficult for Hawthorn to contain us if we can get outside of that cluster.
It's actually a really good point that you bring up. I didn't think of it that way, but now that you mention it, the game style that we're playing in that regard, in terms of, a big emphasis on uncontested possessions and those fast chains that we're doing down the ground from the defensive 50, it is kind of reminiscent of what Hawthorn does when they slaughter their teams. Like when last year, they got a whole ton of uncontested possession. We were trying to go into a contested game and it didn't end up working. This year, we're less of a contested side and more of an uncontested side. So it'll be really interesting to see whether this game plan is actually more suitable to the MCG than what we've done in the past, and more suitable to taking down Hawthorn, which of course we've had a lot of trouble with. And at the MCG, we haven't beaten them since 2009, which was Rory Sloane's debut game for us. Now he's played over 100 games for us since then, so that's quite a long time ago. And in that match, Trent Henschel kicked 4 goals, who of course is no longer playing with us. Mr. Mystery Guest, what do you reckon we can make of Hawthorn's recent form line with those narrow wins against St Kilda and the Bulldogs?
Well, they didn't start last year that well either, but they do have a tendency to just get the job done against the really good sides. Like, the Bulldogs are in really good form, so I don't think... and they still managed to beat them. So I don't think we can take much away from that. And they completely dismantled West Coast.
Yeah, so you don't see the St Kilda game being sort of an indication of how we might maybe get close to them, considering, St Kilda's probably one of the teams that probably won't be pushing for the finals, but I mean, they only lost to Hawks by 3 points or something. Do you reckon that's got anything to do with this week?
I guess it depends I guess it depends on the Hawks players' mindset into the game. I think they probably went in thinking it was going to be a relatively easy game against St Kilda. Whether they do that again, how focused they are going into our game, I'm not sure, but there's been a lot of recent talk in the media pumping us up a little bit, so they would know that we're sort of a threat, I guess. So maybe they'll be more ready for a more intense game than they would have been against St Kilda.
Yeah, I think the mindset definitely plays into it a bit there, especially considering they were playing in Tasmania, where they have an extremely good record at that ground. So I think maybe those, two factors combined together made them think they were going to be a little bit better on the day than they were. And of course, like Luke Hodge, that was his first game back from injury. This week they gained Gibson and Hill. That's more experience into their team, particularly Gibson down back is huge for them. I think that Hawthorn will be one of those sides that will turn around their form just because they know they're playing an opposition that's highly touted, has been playing really well. They seem to have that ability to flick the switch, as you said, and considering it's Sean Burgoyne's 300th game, I think they might put in that extra little bit of effort to attempt to smash us, considering that a lot of people in the media have been cooling down a little bit on Hawthorn, considering their past couple of games. I think they will turn it around, unfortunately for us, in this match. Do you see something similar, Phoenix?
Look, I agree. I think I don't think there'll be any danger of Hawthorn turning up. They have a habit of identifying the main contenders and turning it on in those particular games. That said, mindset isn't the only thing. And I don't think their current form is that great. I think they've struggled a little bit without Ruffhead in the team. So I think personnel-wise and strategically we match up quite well. But certainly I don't think Hawthorn will be slow out of the blocks. So I think they'll be looking to assert themselves. I expect them to be suitably unsociable, as they tend to be in these kinds of matches. And it'll be interesting to see how our young fellas, who I'm sure will be targeted, blokes like Cameron, and I'm sure Betts will be targeted, even though he's not a young bloke. He's a main weapon for us. I think you'll see a pretty unsociable first quarter, and I hope that we stand up to them and maintain our focus and match them the same way we did Sydney last week.
Yeah, I don't want to see anything like the North Melbourne game where we see North Melbourne players, trying to gut punch our players off the ball and then we retaliate and concede free kicks. I don't want to see any of that happening. I think I would expect some of the Hawks players, particularly guys like Hodge and Gibson, to do some of those, shitty gut punch pieces of crap that we don't like to see. Yeah, Lewis, all these guys love to do a little bit of sniping off the ball. I think we'll see that this week. Hopefully our number one enemy in the umpiring department, Matthew Nichols, who's umpiring this week. He's not actually playing for Hawthorn. He's umpiring. Hopefully he doesn't decide to go and give us any stupid free kicks for, Hawks guys trying to snipe us. And yeah, that could be an issue. Do you actually see Matthew Nichols being an issue for us, Phoenix?
Well, he's been an issue for us every other bloody game he's umpired us, so why should this week be any different? Look, what can you do? We've just got to continue to play the ball and not be distracted or buy into Hawthorn's unsociable tactics. At the end of the day, they can gut punch as much as they like, but if we've got the score on the board, then who gives a rat's? So I hope they take that mindset into the game.
Yeah, hopefully we don't succumb to any dodginess. So one of the guys that was probably pushing a little bit for selection this week was Brad Crouch. He was listed as a test on our injury list, but he didn't make it into selection this week. Mr. Mystery Guest, do you see Brad Crouch coming straight back in next week, or do you reckon he's going to be out for a little bit longer, maybe playing some SANFL?
Well, if you're ready to go next week, it'll be 3 weeks. He was only just starting to build some form. So I will probably play at least one SNFL game before coming back.
Can I just interject there? The article that I read on Crouch, he said that he was going to actually be playing the SNFL game this week.
Yeah, he's not named though, which is odd. Like I looked on their AFC website and they've said for their SNFL thing, let me just bring up the article. They said that Brad Crouch trained with Adelaide's SNFL team on Friday, but he won't play at either level this week as the club continues its conservative approach to his management. So it seems like he won't be playing, well, it definitely seems like he won't be playing SNFL this week. Yeah, I'm not sure whether bringing him straight back into AFL next week when we play Fremantle at home would be the right call, considering he's been out for 3 weeks. But I mean, I'm just not sure that he'll do much in the SNFL or really regain all that much form, considering the pace difference.
My personal view is that if he's fit, he plays in the ones. I can't see any point in him coming back through the twos. If they test him during the week and his hammy pulls up fine, you bring him in. If there's any risk, you don't play him at all, which is obviously what's happened this week. I'd be a little surprised if they brought him back through the twos.
Yeah, and we see Hawthorn doing all the time with their star players like Hodge. He was out for a couple of weeks. He comes straight back in. Brad Hill hasn't played the entire season yet, and he's come straight back in, not playing any VFL. So we see some of the really good teams bringing their star players straight back in. I think Brad Crouch fits the bill as a star player for us, and yeah, I'm just not sure that him playing SANFL in the next couple of weeks would be beneficial to our team. Who else do we think could be pushing in to our team for the next couple of weeks, Phoenix?
Well, it's interesting that Henderson hasn't been named on the emergency list at all. From all reports, his form's been pretty solid in the twos, and I think there could possibly be a role for him if DMAC falls away. Obviously, Menzel is the one that we'd all love to see, but I can't at this stage really see a spot for him. The only way I think he gets a game within the next month at least is if Tex needs a rest for whatever he's carrying. And then obviously Riley Knight is unlucky. He could very easily be in the best 22. And I think it's matchups with regards to Riley Knight. Riley Knight might actually come in for Lions when we play a team like the Brisbane Bulldogs where we need a little bit more run. Aside from that, though, I think, there's the usual suspects. Camillus Yeoman, those blokes that are around the edges. It's a good spot to be in, but I can't see anyone. I think, aside from Brad Crouch, we've pretty much fielded our best team as it stands at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. As long as you don't bring Nathan Van Bello back in, I think we'll all be happy on the boards and around other supporters. Yeah, I mean, Cam Ellis-Yolman, as you mentioned, he was listed on the emergencies for this week, so it seems like he is the next in line after, I guess, Lions in terms of our fringe-ish inside midfielders. I expect if Brad Crouch comes in, then unfortunately Lions will miss, despite being reasonably solid over the past couple of weeks. Just unfortunate that we have to kind of play our best team, play our star players, and Lions will probably be the one to miss out. So, yeah, Cam Ellis-Yolman slightly behind Lions at the moment, and yeah, we've got quite a lot of good depth at the moment playing through our SANFL team, which we'll go through in a little bit. But before that, we'll get to the carving station. And I've renamed last week's Spud Watch because Isaac Heaney doesn't really qualify as a Spud, but he did carve us up last week by kicking 4 goals. Mr. Mystery Guest, which lesser light player from the opposition do you think will give us a bit of a beating this week?
You guys pointed out earlier that I think they're in the Hawthorn's forward line. Their smalls seem like the most dangerous with Rioli and Bruce. So I'm worried that we might focus too much on them, and then someone like Sicily might jump up and kick 3 or 4 goals or something.
Yeah, what do you see happening, Phoenix?
Well, aside from Bruce being our bogey guy, the other guy that always worries me, and I think he's terribly underrated, is Isaac Smith. I think you know what you're going to get from Hawthorn star players, Mitchell and Lewis and what the rest of it. But Isaac Smith is our Brodie Smith, and he gains a lot of yards for him. He's got a lot of toe, very penetrating kick. And if he gets off the chain, he could do a little bit of damage. He's the one that I think may bob up and hurt us.
Yeah, and he's certainly hurt us in the past. I remember him having almost a best-on-ground appearance in the match last year, and he's played extraordinarily well against us over the past couple of matches.
Yeah.
I think I'm going a bit different. I think that Tim O'Brien will bob up and kick a couple of goals. It's been not, I wouldn't say quiet, but I wouldn't say like a breakout performance for him yet. I think if we don't focus on, matching up our defenders on all of their forwards to an equal extent, that includes putting a guys on Sicily and O'Brien when they're in the forward line, I think someone like O'Brien could tear us apart. Hopefully not, but you never know. We seem to have a habit of getting cut up by players like that. So, coming to the end of our Hawthorn preview, it's definitely a bumper game. There's been lots to discuss. What are our tips, margin, and best on ground? Starting with you, Phoenix.
Well, I'm going to be frank with you and say that I tipped Sydney last week because last year, whenever I tipped the Crows, they lost. So, but having said that, I'm going to actually tip the Crows this week for the reasons that I previously mentioned. I think we actually benefit from the MCG. I don't think the Hawks are in tip-top shape, and I think we will be out to prove a point. So I'm going to tip us in a close one, say let's go 3 goals. BOG for me, I think, is S. Thompson. I just think he's having a blinder, and I think he'll be up and about and shoveling the ball out all game this week.
Yeah, I mean, and just on Thompson, he's been one of our best players against Hawthorn over the past 5 matches, having regularly got quite high disposal and clearance counts. So, yeah, I think could be a lock-in for the BOG. What do you see happening this weekend, Mr. Mystery Guest?
I just think that Hawthorn are a different beast to Sydney at the MCG compared to home. Sydney at home is it's just different from playing sort of at the MCG. I think we'll close-ish, but I don't think we'll be able to knock off. So I think they'll win by about 20 points. And I'll say Birch will best on ground.
Yeah, that's another one of those guys who plays sort of in the defensive 50 that has a habit of cutting us up from time to time. This week, I'm going to agree with Phoenix. I think that we not necessarily are in the best of game plans to take down Hawthorn, but I just think that it's a new coach with a different style of play that is completely different from what we played in the semi-final. We're seeing a lot more of that uncontested ball, as I mentioned earlier, and I just think that if we can get that game plan running, and if we can turn up on the ground and start playing well in the first quarter, which is something that we didn't do in the semi-final, and if we can adjust to things that Hawthorn is doing on the day, and it seems like Pike is quite a good coach at adjusting on the game day towards the tactics of the opposition, that we will win this one, but it will be very close. I'm going to go just 2 points for the win, and my best on ground, I reckon I'm going to give it to Josh Jenkins. He kicked 4 goals in the last match, and I'm tipping him to give an absolute bath to whoever is on him this week. I also want to call out a really good analysis that I read on the board from Vader. I think he cops a bit of flack sometimes from posters, but yeah, he gave quite a good rundown of why he thinks we're going to get absolutely towelled up by Hawthorn. And it's just some of those things like we mentioned earlier about Hawthorn, being able to flick the switch and, being underrated and stuff like that. It was quite a good post by Vader, so shout out to him for his good analysis there. Don't necessarily agree with him, but quite a good effort with that post. Moving on to our SANFL team. We're back this week. We had the bye last week. We're playing Glenelg at Gliderol Stadium Sunday, 2:10 p.m. Adelaide time. This match will actually be live on Channel 7 in Adelaide, so if you've got nothing better to do on Sunday, chuck on an SNFL team, and we'll see the debuts for the Crows of Alex Keith, who is, of course, our Category B rookie coming across from cricket. He'll be probably playing a key defensive role, and our rookie ruckman, Paul Hunter, also his first game for the Crows, and Riley Knight's coming back in. The outs, of course, being Cameron. He's going to the AFL, and for some reason, Shaw, he is being concussed and won't play a role in this match. Not sure how he got concussed over the bye week, but it definitely did happen. How do we see this SNFL match lining up, Phoenix?
Yeah, Shaw must have got knocked out of training or something. Look, we're taking all before us in the poor old SANFL at the moment. With such a strong team, I mean, that would probably give the likes of St Kilda and Brisbane a run for their money, in all honesty. Look, I don't think we'll have any trouble with the Bays, even if it is down at Glyderol at the moment. I'm pretty comfortable. It'll be very interesting to see how those debutantes go. And I'm also interested to see the ongoing form of Riley O'Brien, because I just have a feeling that Sammy Jacobs might need a week off in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it seems like he's playing a little bit injured. I mean, not necessarily from the knee knock that he copped in the last game, but it just seems like he's not quite had the ability to time his jumps in the ruck or do all those things he usually does around the ground. Particularly his marking, I think, has been off throughout the first part of the season. So I agree. I think we might have to take Jacobs out of the side. I'm not sure when. I mean, we've got an extremely tough lineup to the start of the season. I mean, it's just so hard to see, when's the best opportunity to give him a rest. But, I mean, yeah, he hasn't been at his best, unfortunately, Jacobs. Do you see Riley O'Brien coming in anytime soon, MMG?
Well, possibly, but I think the best time to bring him in would be to use him for his first game, to use him in tandem with Jacobs rather than replacing Jacobs, because I'm not sure how O'Brien would go doing a full AFL game on his own, because I think he gets a fair bit of help from Loudon in the SNFL, more than he would get from Jenkins anyway. So I'm not sure if, at least early on, that we should just swap him out for Jacobs, and if it would be better to maybe play it 70-30 or 60-40 or something with Jacobs in terms of time and ruck. And that way, I guess Jacobs do that for a few games, and that way it allows Jacobs to have a bigger rest, I guess. And he could have Jacobs sit on the bench or at full forward a little bit more. But I think to do that, we'd have to take out Jenkins. So, bit of an awkward balance. I'm not quite sure how to fix that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just have O'Brien or Jacobs sitting on the bench for, half a match. We kind of need to, keep up the rotations like we've been doing thanks to the rotation cap. I agree that putting him in tandem is probably an interesting idea, and it might introduce him to AFL in a more light way, but that would require either O'Brien playing in the forward line for some of the time or Jacobs playing in the forward line. And Jacobs isn't a great forward, and O'Brien, he's kicked a couple of goals in the SNFL, but I don't think he's a great forward either. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation there. Although I really hope that he gets AFL games this year, because he's been really pushing for selection with his outstanding SNFL ruck work over this season and last season. So, yeah, hopefully he gets a run. But yeah, I agree with Phoenix earlier as well that I think we're going to towel up Glenelg this week, like we've been doing in all our SNFL games this year. So not really that much more to say about that game until we start getting some injuries. I think we'll be way too strong in the SNFL. Other matches for the round. There's quite a couple of interesting ones this week. They could go down to the wire. We'll start with Sydney versus West Coast at the SCG on Saturday at 1:45 p.m. These two teams probably in form, I'd say. Well, especially after West Coast demolished Richmond last week and Sydney looked quite good against us. Phoenix, how do you see this match shaking up?
Look, Sydney at home, always a tough assignment, especially at the SCG rather than Aussie Stadium. I would imagine I put them in another form category to West Coast. I think West Coast, when really challenged, haven't looked overly convincing, and I would think Sydney running away probably 4 or 5 goals at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it is at the SCG, so you've got to sort of consider it's at their home ground, and they've been quite good at the SCG. West Coast not a great travelling team, so I agree. I think Sydney will probably get up by a couple of goals. How do you see it playing out, Mr. Mystery Guest?
Yeah, I think at the SCG, it gives Sydney that little bit of advantage. I think it might be a bit closer, though. I think it might be only a couple of goals or so.
Yeah, should be an interesting match, that's for sure. Two guys that will probably, I'm going to say definitely will be in the top 8 come the end of the year. Another game that I think, I'm not sure whether this one will necessarily be interesting in terms of the quality of opposition, but Port versus Geelong at Adelaide Oval on Saturday night. Now, Port got absolutely destroyed last week against GWS. They were terrible. They're facing Geelong, which weren't overly amazing against Essendon. I actually watched that match and thought Geelong looked way off their best. Being at Adelaide Oval will be quite interesting. Phoenix, who wins this one and by how much?
Cats by 10 goals. Port aren't near it at the moment, and I don't think they can turn around that form line in 1 week. I don't think Adelaide Oval really holds any particular demons for Geelong. I think Geelong basically just got through their game against Essendon, and I honestly think that they will carve Port up in the midfield, and I expect Hawkins to have a bit of a field day because I think Carlisle's still out, isn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess I'll run Trangover or someone on Hawkins, but I can't see Port getting within 6 goals, to be honest.
Yeah. What about you, Mr. Guest? How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't Port on a side that can just flick the switch, and they've copped all sorts of, I guess, well, I was about to say abuse, but that's not the right word. Criticism throughout the week, but I can't see them really turning it around. I don't think that Geelong I don't think they've played that many games at Adelaide Oval, but they don't have a great record at travelling to Adelaide in general, I don't think. But I think it's going to be a 5-goal win, at least, for Geelong.
Yeah, I think Geelong will win by 50. I just... looking across their list last week and looking at the guys that were performing, I mean, their depth is just shocking. Their star players aren't playing well at all. With the exclusion of Robbie Gray, I think he's still standing up. But, I mean, Boak's down, Hartlett's down, Ebert is complete garbage. Trengove isn't a very good defender. Dixon is playing like an absolute idiot. So, yeah, I just can't see them turning it around, and I think they're going to get thumped off the park. Hopefully there'll be some people along from Adelaide to boo Dangerfield while supporting Geelong as well. So, yeah, hopefully we see that. The other match I wanted to highlight, Gold Coast versus North Melbourne at Metricon Stadium on Saturday twilight. Gold Coast, they got towelled up last week by Brisbane. They looked completely off, and of course we saw Stephen May's pretty shocking hit on Stephen Martin, so he's out for the next 5 weeks. North Melbourne have been in ripping form. They took down Fremantle and have looked like they'll be finishing in the 8 or maybe even the top 4. Phoenix, do you think Gold Coast will turn around against North, or will North finally win a game up there?
I think it's North Melbourne's turn up there, to be honest. Gold Coast losing May are going to find it very hard to match up on the 3 tools that North run on the park.
And Thompson as well. That's their other second.
Yeah, exactly. So I just don't think they're going to have the defensive strength to hold North Melbourne to a losing score. So I think North might break the drought up there this week.
What about you, MMG? Do you think the same?
Yeah, I think so. North have looked a bit more consistent this year compared to previous years. It's hard to get a decent read on Gold Coast as well. Losing looked alright so far, but they dropped the ball a little bit last week.
Yeah, I think that North will probably take this one out. I think it could be close if Tom Lynch continues to play as well as he's been playing. I don't really rate North Melbourne's key defenders that well, especially at stopping guys who are good contested marks. So I think that there's a chance that Tom Lynch could get off the chain, but whether that's enough to, offset the issues with defence that they're going to have on the game, I don't think they'll be able to manage it this week, unfortunately. Any other matches that strike your fancy this week? How about Collingwood versus Essendon on Monday? That'll be an interesting match.
Yeah, Essendon are going to come to play, I think. I think they will probably have been circling this one on the calendar as the one where, being on the big stage, and there's been so much criticism about their ongoing involvement in the Anzac Day match given their indiscretions. I think they'll be out to prove a point against a Collingwood team that is only just going. They're not looking convincing at all. Essendon haven't been terrible. They've they've got a lot of young guys, and obviously, you know, they don't really have the personnel to mix it with the better teams in the comp. But against Collingwood, I think they'll give it a shake. I think I'm going to stick with Collingwood, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Essendon got up. And if Essendon do get up, the hype about Buckley's job is going to be intense for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, he'll certainly be on the chopping block. I think if anyone saw the NAB Cup game of Carlton versus Essendon, that is probably going to be a similar standard to this match on Anzac Day, unfortunately. I think it'll be two very poorly skilled sides going up against each other. I think Essendon will probably bring a bit more effort considering their situation, but look, it's going to be a terrible match, and I think Collingwood will probably just get over the line. How about you, MMG? How do you see it?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that both sides lift a little bit for the occasion. But there's a strong chance that this might be one of the worst Anzac Day games in recent memory.
Yeah, it's gonna be shit. So I think, yeah, those are probably the more exciting games from the weekend. I mean, there's a few other ones like Melbourne versus Richmond that could be interesting, considering Melbourne's in pretty good form, Richmond's in bad form. But other than that, I think a lot of the footy world will be tuning in, especially on Friday night, to see probably one of the best Friday night matches that has actually come on this year yet. So, fingers crossed.
Could you think of a worse game to put Sunday Twilight than Fremantle Carlton?
Yeah,
how many people are going to watch it? 9, 10?
Yeah, I mean, Sunday Twilight is not a big draw card of a time slot. The fact that they've put on that shocking match on there, I mean, what's that saying about Sunday night football in the future? No one's going to watch it. It's
almost like they've just given that slot away, because why would you put Fremantle Carlton on there? Yeah, I got no idea.
Like, why would you even have a Sunday night game? Actually, is it Sunday night or is it Sunday Twilight? Because Sunday night's Melbourne-Richmond.
Yeah, but I think it's a night game in Perth. And I think as a result, it's 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon televised over here. Irrespective, obviously we're doing Sunday night because of the Monday holiday, but I thought they'd given Sunday night games away. I can't see the point.
Yeah. Looking at the schedule, it's Fremantle's playing Carlton at 2:15 local time, which I think translates to the Sunday Twilight slot at 4, like you said. Melbourne Richmond is on in the evening at 7:10, but still, I mean, no one's going to watch Fremantle Carlton. It will just be a shocker. Just before we close up on the podcast, I thought I'll mention some of the interesting betting odds. Again, don't go out and bet a whole ton of money on matches like Adelaide, because they're at $2.85. Probably, bookies don't think they'll get up, but if you think they will, maybe put that through. Geelong 40 plus on $4.90. I think that could be the best value of the round. If they can get up by a huge margin, you'll make a fair bit there. But again, bet responsibly and all that stuff. I think that's probably it for the bets. Brings us to the end of the Crowcast preview. We've gone a bit longer than usual. Hopefully that doesn't put anyone off or anything. But yeah, we'll be back live again next week, Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Adelaide time. You can follow us on Twitter, BF Crowcast, Facebook, BF Crowcast. We're on iTunes if you Google for us or look us up in iTunes. Give us a review. It's really helpful if people review the cast and all that. Helps us in the rankings and everything. And Phoenix, you'll be back on Sunday with the review cast at 7 p.m. Adelaide time. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think we're going to have a return appearance of my non-big footy mate. And I think Nicky's also along for this one again as well. So it should be a very interesting game to review.
Yeah, I might jump in there too, depending on what's going on. We'll have
more the merrier.
We'll have a nice chat about the game, and hopefully there's not too many rants we'll have to put through after we face one of our toughest opponents. All right, thanks everyone for listening, and we will be back next week. See you later.
See you guys.